What's up, you guys? Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about everything you need to know about your wrist and your watch. Let's get into it. So the first question you need to answer is, which wrist will you be wearing your watch on? Typically, you're going to wear your watch on your non-dominant hand. Personally, I'm right-handed, so I wear my watch on my left wrist. This is because when I'm going through my day-to-day activities, writing or working on appliances or whatever it is that I might be doing, it's not getting banged around and damaged in the process. You're paying however much money you're paying for this watch. Unless you're just using it as a tool, then you'll want to keep it nice. So do your best to kind of keep it out of harm's way by placing it on your non-dominant hand. If wearing it on your non-dominant hand is uncomfortable to you, go ahead, pop it on your dominant hand, no problems whatsoever. Just keep in mind, it's probably going to get a little bit more banged and scratched up. If that's something you're okay with, then next point of order, will you be wearing your watch loose or tight? I wear my watch tight. It's more of a standard fit, basically meaning it's not flopping around my wrist. If I shake my wrist, it's not going anywhere. I've seen people that have in the past worn it very, very loose, whether it's on a bracelet or a strap. You can fit like a finger or two in under where their watch buckles, and their watch is just flopping around all over the place. Personally, I think that looks sloppy, and you know, it's very dangerous for your watch, but if that's what you're comfortable with, then go ahead and do that. But you need to know how you're going to wear it prior to moving on to the measurements and specifications of the watch, because it's going to affect it. Okay, next, where's it going to sit on your wrist? Typically, people have a bone on their wrist right about here. Personally, I don't really have one much to speak of, so I wear my watch very high on my wrist. I wear it right where the arm bone and the hand meet, where your wrist creases, and that's completely comfortable to me. I can do my day-to-day tasks, no issues whatsoever. If you have that bone and it sticks out a little bit for you, you might need to move it down, loosen up your watch, and position it just under that bone. So you're gonna wear your watch more closely to something like this. So there's gonna be a little bit of a gap between where your wrist bends and where your watch sits, which is completely fine, because that's probably going to be what's most comfortable to you if you have that bone there and it's going to be getting in the way. Now what you're going to want to do is find the diameter or circumference of your wrist. Personally, I like diameter because that's going to measure that top portion of your wrist and where the watch will sit, and whether it overhangs or not, you can clearly tell by the measurements themselves. Most people will go with the circumference of your wrist, and that works just fine too. I just feel it's a little less accurate. It doesn't really take into consideration your body type and stuff like that. So personally, measure it across and you should be good. My wrist is 7.5 inches in circumference, and the diameter of my wrist is 2.5 inches. If you do the math on that, that's going to be 190.5 millimeters in circumference, and it would be 63.5 millimeters in diameter. So for me, like I said earlier, I think diameter is a better indicator for whether a watch will fit on your wrist or not. And so it looks like my maximum lug to lug distance is 63.5 millimeters. So as you can see in the picture, when I mention lug to lug, it's the measurement from the top of the lug at the top of the watch to the bottom of the lug at the bottom of the watch. And basically that's going to be the furthest point on most watches. So if that measurement's within, let's say for me personally, if it's under 63.5 millimeters, then the watch should fit on my wrist. Here I have a Nixon watch that has a lug to lug measurement of 60.275 millimeters. And so with that on my wrist, it should be able to fit with at least 3 millimeters of clearance. So let's take a look at that and see if it holds true. It's hard to tell there, but I'll take a picture of an overhead shot and put it in the video. Your bracelet and your strap also affect the way that the watch wears and feels on your wrist. If you have a thick bracelet, it's going to make the watch feel bigger, and it might be out of proportion with whatever size wrist you have and the look you're trying to go for. If you want to slim a certain watch down that's a little bit larger, put it on a bracelet that's going to be a leather. Put it on a strap that's going to be a leather strap, a nylon strap, pearl strap, something to kind of reduce that form factor on your wrist, and you should be good to go. Case diameter and case height, those also affect the way that the watch appears on your wrist and feels on your wrist, what kind of profile it has, but honestly, it doesn't really affect much of how the watch fits on your wrist. It's more of a comfortability thing and whether it looks appealing to you or not. So knowing those measurements is important, but it's not really anything you need in order to determine whether a watch will fit on your wrist or not. Another thing to consider is the style of watch, or I guess the type of watch. For instance, with like a dive watch, it's going to have that diver's bezel that you use to click around the watch face in order to track time underwater or track time period. Am I right? So even though it has a purpose and it's used as a tool on the watch, it affects the way that the watch appears on your wrist. A watch with a bezel and or a chapter ring often appears a little bit smaller on your wrist than a watch with a more open dial, like a dress watch that's on a larger size, or a pilot's watch that is, big and visible. So you want to take that into consideration as well. Another thing to note when it comes to styles and designs and stuff is the color of the watch. This isn't anything that I've noticed personally, but I've heard people say that the darker a watch is, the smaller it will appear. So let's say you have two exact same watches. One has a black dial, one has a white dial. The black dial should appear a little bit smaller on your wrist, and the white dial should appear a little bit larger on your wrist. I haven't noticed that in my experience, but if you see that it works for you and it feels more comfortable looking down on it at your wrist, then that could be helpful, I guess. So yeah, just a quick overview. What you're going to want to do is figure out where you want to wear your watch on your wrist so that you know where to measure your wrist and see how everything's going to play into the overall look that you're going for. If you wear it a little bit higher on your wrist, then you're going to be able to wear a slightly larger watch without it feeling uncomfortable. If you wear it a little lower like I do, you're probably going to need a little bit smaller of a watch in order for it to feel more comfortable for you. But whatever is most comfortable to you, go ahead and do that. So after you're considering that, then you're looking at the watch and what kind of dimensions it has and figuring out whether it works well for the style that you're going for. Most importantly is lug to lug, and then also whether the watch is on a strap or a bracelet. After that, you're going to look at the style. It's going to be, whether it has a bezel, whether it has a chapter ring, if it's an open dial, if it's a large face, small face, things like that, dark color, light color. That's going to help you determine whether the watch is something you're actually going to like on your wrist or not. Then finally, if you have family members or friends that are into watches or have watches period, and you're able to try some on and kind of get a test drive of them, then you're probably going to want to do that. Go ahead and try on as many as they'll let you, and you'll get an idea of what feels right to you. So yeah, the goal of this video wasn't to tell you what watches can fit on your wrist and which ones will look good. That's for you to decide, but I wanted to give you some helpful information to hopefully make the decision-making process a little bit easier and less stressful. If you did make it all the way to the end of the video, I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like. If you have any other feedback for new collectors or collectors just looking for some advice, please leave that in the comment section below. See you in the next one.